life.
Say that.
Let me say that. To open up the phones at some point, because I don't believe that. I've never heard the white men like stiff
They
dicks.
do.
What happens when love dares to cross the lines the world still pretends don't exist? Not in secret, but in the spotlight. On red carpets, in Super Bowl seats, and on the covers of magazines. You'd never know just by looking at them. The way they walked into the room like they'd always belonged together, quietly, effortlessly. But behind that calm was a story the world almost never got to hear. It's not what you expect from couples who live under the blinding lights of fame. Love not built on headlines or matching status, but something far more human. Something that still turns heads even today. Interracial love stories that didn't just defy stereotypes. They rewrote them. It's easy to assume that love in Hollywood is all smoke and mirrors, something scripted for the red carpet. But every now and then we find real stories. Unscripted, messy, extraordinary. Stories where two people from wildly different worlds meet, and suddenly the rest of the world doesn't matter. What makes these stories so unforgettable isn't just the couples themselves. It's how they faced the noise, the judgment, and the pressure, and still chose each other. It happened in 1990 when David Bowie, the enigmatic British icon of music and style, met a woman who would change everything. Her name was Iman, Somali-born, already a global supermodel, known not just for her beauty, but her mind. She didn't need anyone to complete her, least of all a rock star. And yet, Bowie knew the moment he saw her, he'd just met the love of his life. In fact, he told his friends that same night, "That's the woman I'm going to marry." They married 2 years later in a quiet ceremony in Switzerland, later celebrated in Florence with just family and a few close friends. Unlike the wild romances of that era, their story didn't thrive on paparazzi drama. It thrived on privacy, mutual admiration, and depth. Bowie often called Iman the light of my life, describing her as brilliant, strong, and endlessly kind. Through decades, they became a rare symbol of an interracial relationship grounded in soul, not spectacle. When David passed in 2016, Iman quietly stepped back from public life, telling People magazine in 2023 that their love story never ended. Even now, she wears a necklace with his name. "He's always with me," she said. Love like that doesn't end. It transforms. And theirs became something larger, a blueprint for what love can look like when it transcends everything. But they weren't alone. In 1987, at a modest London restaurant, Robert De Niro, already a legend in American cinema, locked eyes with a woman who wasn't from the film world at all. Grace Hightower was working as a waitress, but her presence was unmistakable. Their relationship wasn't a whirlwind. It was steady, patient, the kind of connection that builds over time and withstands the storm. By 1997, they were married. A year later, their son, Elliot, was born. The public didn't always understand them. In 1999, they briefly filed for divorce, but by 2004, they'd remarried. De Niro never shied away from showing pride in his multiracial family. In interviews, he often credited Grace and their children for opening his eyes to a deeper understanding of injustice, something that influenced both his personal convictions and his choice of roles. Although they officially split in 2018, their bond never disappeared. As of late 2024, they continue to co-parent with quiet dignity, and De Niro, who welcomed another child last year, has remained vocal about the strength and influence of the women in his life. For him, love wasn't about optics. It was about growing through life together. Then there's George Lucas, the man who gave us Star Wars, who, in 2006, found something real and deeply grounding in Melody Hobson. She wasn't from his galaxy. Melody was a force of her own, an investor, a philanthropist, a board member of J.P. Morgan Chase, and former vice chair of Starbucks. She wasn't impressed by Lucas's fame, but she admired his vision, and he was drawn to her intellect. They married at Skywalker Ranch in 2013, in a ceremony that felt more intimate than intergalactic. That same year, they welcomed their daughter Everest via surrogate. Today, Melody is the chairwoman of the Starbucks board and co-CEO of Ariel Investments. Together, she and Lucas don't just lead, they give. Their work in education, philanthropy, and racial equity has redefined what it means to be a power couple. At a 2024 TED event, Hobson shared, "We never wanted to be known as an interracial couple. We wanted to be known as a couple who mattered." And they are. Not just for what they represent, but for how they live it. Tamara Mowry, the bubbly twin from Sister Sister, found herself facing something different when she fell in love with Adam Housley, a Fox News correspondent. Their romance began in 2005 and went public soon after. It wasn't long before critics emerged, not just from strangers online, but even from fans. Some couldn't reconcile the image of a black woman with a partner from a conservative media outlet. But Tamara didn't back down. She spoke openly, sometimes tearfully, about the pushback. Adam, for his part, remained fiercely supportive, calling Tamara the most beautiful soul I've ever known. They married in 2011 and now have 2 children. In 2023, Tamara said in an interview, "We've endured every judgment imaginable, but the only people who define our love are us." It wasn't the first time public scrutiny threatened love, and it wouldn't be the last. Long before he played Doctor Alex Karev on Grey's Anatomy, Justin Chambers was a struggling model. That's where he met Kesha, a booker at a modeling agency. She wasn't dazzled by his cheekbones. She noticed his heart. They married in 1993, long before Hollywood even knew his name, and somehow they never became tabloid fodder. Their marriage has quietly endured 3 decades and 5 kids. Chambers rarely talks about fame, but when he does, he talks about Keisha, how she helped him stay grounded, reminded him of who he was beyond the camera. In 2024, he appeared at a rare charity event with her by his side, where he said, "Everything good in my life starts at home." That home isn't filled with cameras or headlines, it's filled with love. Then there's the story of Roger and Chaz Ebert. He was the face of film criticism. She was the mind behind a law firm. When they met, it didn't take long to realize this wasn't going to be a typical romance. After marrying in 1992, they worked side by side, not just in media, but in advocacy, film festivals, and beyond. When cancer took Roger's ability to speak, Chaz became his voice. Literally. After his passing in 2013, Chaz didn't fade from view. She became the heartbeat of the Ebert Foundation, launching programs for underrepresented voices in film. In a 2024 NPR interview, she said, "Our love never stopped speaking. It just changed languages." And then there's Halle Berry and Gabriel Aubry. For a moment, they looked like the perfect Hollywood couple. She, the Academy Award-winning actress, a French-Canadian model with cover-worthy looks. They had a daughter, Nala, in 2008. But behind the flashbulbs, things were fracturing. Their breakup in 2010 turned into a prolonged custody battle. But even in the fallout, something remained. A fierce commitment to their daughter. In 2023, reports confirmed they've reached a more peaceful arrangement. Even in the aftermath of a public breakup, Halle Berry and Gabriel Aubry managed something rare: quiet grace. Their custody battle once filled tabloid headlines, but inside the noise, they protected something sacred: their daughter, Nahla. Behind the scenes, they worked side by side, always putting her needs before their own. Gabriel once said fatherhood was the greatest role of his life. Halle, through her silence and actions, showed that love for a child could steady even the rockiest seas. What they built wasn't just a co-parenting arrangement. It was a partnership, rebuilt from the ashes of romance. There was no bitterness in their public words, just a shared commitment to a child who deserved peace. In a world quick to turn pain into spectacle, their quiet maturity stood out. Love doesn't always survive in its original form, but theirs evolved into something equally powerful: a deep-rooted, practical devotion, forged in responsibility and mutual care, Around the same time across the Atlantic, a different kind of love story was unfolding. Thandiwe Newton, known for roles that challenge and stir, met Al Parker, a British screenwriter with a quiet intellect and a creative heart. It wasn't fireworks, it was slow-burning admiration. They met in the late 90s and within a year were married. 3 children followed, and so did years of navigating fame while trying to stay grounded. Their bond was always bigger than Hollywood. Thandiwe often referred to Ol as her anchor, someone who never asked her to shrink or shift to fit an industry mold. In return, she supported his journey behind the camera. Together, they built a home rooted in empathy, intellectual honesty, and quiet resilience. Though they reportedly separated in 2022, the love they shared still echoes. Their story reminds us that endings don't erase what was real. They just begin new chapters. Then there's Zoe Saldana and Bradley Cooper, a pairing that felt like it could redefine the idea of a modern Hollywood power couple. They crossed paths while filming The Words in 2011, and what started as co-stars quickly evolved into something more. Though they never publicly confirmed much, their closeness spoke louder than any statement could. They were often spotted together, not just at events, but in quiet corners, supporting one another without the showy declarations. Friends described them as intense, driven, and deeply private. That combination, while electric, also carried weight. Their romance, brief as it was, hinted at something complex. 2 ambitious souls trying to find stillness in each other, even as the world around them spun fast. In the 90s, a different kind of spotlight fell on Chris Noth and Beverly Johnson. He was the rising star of Sex and the City. She was a legend, the first black woman to grace the cover of American Vogue. When they began dating, the media couldn't look away. Their union was glamorous, but it was also groundbreaking. They married in 1995 and had a daughter, an emblem of 2 worlds coming together. But fame can amplify cracks, and the pressure they faced, both external and internal, eventually led to their separation. Still, their relationship, short as it was, left its mark. They didn't just turn heads, they challenged expectations, proving that love in the spotlight could still carry meaning, even when it didn't last forever. Some relationships unfold far from flashing cameras, in quiet corners where loyalty is louder than fame. Paul Wall, Houston's beloved rap icon, met Crystal when his star was still rising. She wasn't drawn in by the fame. She stood beside him when the lights dimmed and the applause faded. Over time, their connection grew into something unshakable. Crystal rarely speaks publicly, but Paul often credits her with his stability. In an industry known for chaos, their marriage has been steady, a reflection of trust and deep emotional grounding. They've raised children, endured the highs and lows of music life, and remained each other's constants. In a world of short-lived attention spans, their love stands as a quiet defiance of that norm. For Eve, love came unexpectedly, wrapped in a British accent and a racing helmet. She met Maximilian Cooper at a charity rally of all places. He was a race car driver and entrepreneur. She was already a global music force. On paper, they couldn't have been more different, but the bond was instant. Within months, they were inseparable. They married in 2014 and welcomed their son nearly 8 years later. In interviews, Eve has said Max sees her fully. Artist, woman, partner. He's never asked her to tone down her fire. And that, she said, is what love should feel like. Together, they've navigated not just fame, but 2 cultures, 2 continents, and the expectations that come with being a high-profile interracial couple. And through it all, they've built something enduring. Whoopi Goldberg and David Clawson had a spark that began behind the camera. She was already making waves as a bold, unapologetic voice in film and comedy. David, a Dutch cinematographer, brought a quiet creative presence. They met through their shared passion for storytelling and quickly formed a bond that moved as fast as the films they loved. Though their marriage was brief, what they shared carried meaning. Whoopi has spoken warmly of David, describing him as someone who truly understood her, not just the public persona, but the woman behind it. Their time together may have been short, but it was sincere. And sometimes a moment of genuine connection is enough to leave a lasting impression. In the unlikeliest of places, a reality show experiment, Cameron Hamilton and Lauren Speed found something real. No scripts, no filters, just voices in the dark connecting without knowing a single detail about appearances. What began in a soundproof booth became one of the most authentic love stories modern TV has delivered. Against the odds, they didn't just stay together, they flourished. They built a business, a brand, and most importantly, a life. In a world where viewers are quick to question what's real, Cameron and Lauren offered an answer. When love is rooted in truth, it doesn't need to explain itself. And then there's Matthew McConaughey and Camila Alves. He was already a household name when they met. She, a Brazilian model and designer, brought a grounded elegance that softened his famously wild spirit. Their love wasn't about glitz, it was about rhythm. Finding the same beat in life, family, and purpose. Now, with 3 children and over a decade of marriage behind them, they've proven that even in the world of flashing lights, some love stories are built to last. Camila Alves often moves through the world with the quiet strength of someone who's found her center. Beside Matthew McConaughey, she's become more than a partner. She's the compass that keeps their family aligned. While he may still embody the wild charisma that made him a star, it's Camila who brings depth to his world, reminding him of his roots and the values that transcend spotlight or fame. Their marriage doesn't just bridge continents or cultures. It represents a meeting of minds, faiths, and intentions. And perhaps what's most striking is how effortlessly they do it. Behind the scenes, their life is anchored by rituals, shared responsibilities, and a reverence for both Brazilian and Texan traditions. It's a love that doesn't need noise to be powerful. And yet, beneath their harmony lies a rarely discussed truth. How often have they quietly resisted the Hollywood machine just to preserve what they've built? The power of that kind of steady love takes on new meaning when you turn to a story like Travis Kelce and Kayla Nicole. From the outside, their relationship seemed tailor-made for the era of Instagram romance. Flirty captions, high-wattage appearances, and playful banter that made millions root for them. But what most never saw was the subtle balancing act behind every post. A white NFL superstar dating a bold, black journalist in a league still wrestling with racial double standards? That wasn't just love. It was pressure. When Kayla opened up about the unspoken expectations she felt from within her own community, it sparked difficult but vital conversations. Why did her relationship feel like a battleground for identity? The couple eventually went their separate ways in 2022, but what they left behind was more than memories. It was a narrative shift. For Travis, dating Kayla wasn't just about chemistry. It was a choice to stand beside a woman who challenged him, publicly and privately. And for Kayla, loving him meant navigating both admiration and critique. Their breakup may have signaled an end, but the legacy of their love became something bigger, a public rejection of fear-based boundaries. Then came Serena Williams and Alexis Ohanian, a pairing so unexpected it almost felt like fiction. She was a global icon, fiery, unstoppable, mythic. He was the brainy, soft-spoken tech founder of Reddit. They met by chance at a hotel in Rome, and what began as polite conversation soon evolved into something cosmic. Serena, long celebrated for her unparalleled athleticism and fierce independence, found in Alexis a partner who never flinched in her shadow. He admired her not because of her trophies, but because of the fire it took to earn them. Their 2017 wedding in New Orleans became a celebration not just of their union, but of possibility. Proof that intellect and athleticism, legacy and innovation could fuse into something lasting. Today, they raise 2 daughters in a home filled with color, stories, and global perspective. Alexis has said more than once that his most important title isn't founder or investor, it's Serena's husband. In a world where traditional gender roles still linger, his example is radical in its simplicity. And for Serena, who redefined what it means to be a powerful black woman in sport and society, finding someone who honors her truth without shrinking from it. That's a story still unfolding. Not all love stories are built on surprise. Some begin as slow collaborations between two souls quietly orbiting each other. That's the case with KJ Smith and Sky Black. Their chemistry sparked on a film set and quickly grew into something magnetic. Sky wasn't just a fellow actor, he was a mirror. Someone who reflected KJ's strength back to her in ways that made her even bolder. He called her his greatest inspiration. She called him her peace. Together, they didn't just fall in love, they built a vision. As their love bloomed, another relationship, just as high profile, though narratively flipped, continued to inspire. John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, in many ways, flipped the expected racial script. A black man and a white woman navigating fame, family, and tragedy in full view of the world. Their connection has always been about more than headlines. From political activism to personal vulnerability, they've invited the public into their love story with an authenticity that's disarmed even the harshest critics. These couples didn't just find love, they redefined it. They proved that connection, when nurtured with respect and courage, can outshine history, scrutiny, and even the very systems that tried to keep them apart. Because love, real love, never just exists, it echoes. If this episode moved you or made you think differently about love in the spotlight, hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And if you're into stories that go deeper than the tabloids ever will, subscribe.